And gentlemen, this is work session number 121. And we are going to receive 4 reports. And we're going to run this the same way as we did on Monday. So the 4 committees we're going to hear from are Foundation for Applied Technical Education, or FATE, the Career Technical Education Advisory Committee, CTAC, Facilities Planning Advisory Council, FPAC, and the Adult Community Education ACE Advisory Committee. So if we could please have a representative of each committee, please come forward in the front here. So the way we're going to run this is we've coaxed all of you to abbreviate remarks. There's so much to cover, and we have 4 committees. And then we have, well, we don't have 12 people here, but we've got a number of us. Most of us are here, and we have lots of questions. You're going to provoke a lot of thinking. So what I'd like to do is have each of you present 5-10 minutes, whatever, the salient points, the things that you want to make sure that the board and the public hears. And then we'll have just open questions from board members following that. So I think that we'll do this in the order that I just read. So I'll ask for FATE, then CTAC, then FPAC, and then finally ACE. So please introduce, first of all, before we go any further, could you please just introduce yourselves and tell us which committee you're representing?
I'm Patty Datas, and I'm the chair for CTAC.
Karen Hogan, the chair of FPAC.
Kathleen McBride, chair of ACE.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and start with FATE.
Okay, well, first I'd like to thank the board for hearing us and all the wonderful things we've done over the past year. I'd also like to thank our executive director, Chad, who's in the room, and Beth and Marcy, who have put a great board together. I'm very pleased and honored to sit here with you today, and having been on the board 4 to 5 years, and now president, I've been able to see it grow and get better, and through this presentation and your support, we've been able to do a lot of good things. So before I summarize that, I would like to add that, by choosing individuals, not just from the business community like myself, but our past president, Ed Johnson, he was a student at Oakton and graduated, well, I won't say when, but myself, I graduated Chantilly High School, and our future president, Vice President Will Lang, who's with us today, graduated South Lakes High School. So we're not just, part of the business community, but we were part of the school. I'm sorry? Yeah, exactly. So having said all that, I'd like to, again, just give you a brief highlights of 2014-15 and what FATE's done. Our residential construction site completed the 6th home in Spring Village Estates, listed now for $885,000. Just we had an open house a couple weeks ago that highlighted that, and I think a few of you may have been able to attend. 5,000 square foot home, authentic assessment. It's the 22nd home built by the students in the county. The home incorporates universal design elements, 36-inch doorways, no step into the house, non-slip flooring, lower light switches, higher electrical outlets. They've really come a long way in what they've been able to do and incorporate in these homes. It's amazing. Student auto sales. All 13 high schools offering automotive technology participate in the student auto sales. 134 cars were repaired and returned to the street at an average sale price of just over $1,400. Total car sales for the year were 208,477, of which 145,275 was returned to the schools for repair cost and profit, which was used to support other students that compete in state, national conferences, field trips, and industry-specific equipment. So a lot goes back into the schools. Entrepreneurship. Funding was provided for entrepreneurship programs at Annandale High School, Chantilly Academy, Herndon High School, Marshall Academy, and West Potomac High School to support of the Market Day project. Also, in Chantilly specifically, we've seen presentations recently for their Spirit Box, which was cultivated from the original store that they presented to us years ago and have had good success with. So, stealing an idea from Loudoun County and where a couple of those schools have the Spirit Boxes and are selling goods from that, we believe it's a great opportunity for them to earn more. So we're excited about that. The Fate Improvement Grant Program, funding was provided to Robinson Secondary School Criminal Justice Program to develop a drunk and distracted driving program to be shared by all criminal justice programs across the county. Additionally, funding was provided for Irving Middle School to develop during and after school STEM integration program, utilizing the residential construction site and Fate board members as industry guests during lunch and learn sessions with the students. Last year, we approved and implemented with success the ambulance and fire and EMS vehicle for Falls Church, and we were pretty proud of the success of that. Scholarships, received corporate scholarship contributions of $24,000, awarded 12 scholarships for a total of $34,800. In recognition, we had our annual FATE, fourth annual business partner and teacher recognition dinner, where 29 teachers, 22 business partners were recognized for their exemplary contributions to FCPS and FATE. And again, we intend to have that again this fall and hope that many of you will be able to attend. If you have in the past, I think you've seen the success. We can attribute a lot of our student auto sales success to that of the competition that's held or somewhat ensued by that and in between the schools, and I think that's been a big success. So that's all.
Fantastic, thank you. In the Velkoff household, we have a graduate of South Lakes and a graduate of Chantilly. Okay, next, CTAC.
Thank you. I'd like to also recognize we have a couple members here that are actually here. John Whitman's back there, who's the vice chair. Charles Britt, who's going to be our future vice chair, and actually John is going to be our future chair for next year. And Randy Kolzik, also one of our members that came out. So last year we had the charge to go out and explore, investigate, recommend communication methods, marketing, delivery modalities, and partnerships that could enhance CTE programs. We had 8 meetings this last year, and we really did some different things. We focused, instead of so much internally what was going on, but kind of looking outward, what were things that were affecting CTE programs. So we started to do some evaluations that way. So one of the first things we looked at was the student learning plan, which was one of our recommendations last year. Lynn Harris came out and talked to us and told us about the program. The committee had a lot of suggestions and a lot of things that came forward on it. A couple things that they've already started to implement from these suggestions include integrating student learning plans with the workplace readiness curriculum for each CTE class, and expanding access to CTE teachers in the Naviance class, career cluster data, and additionally helping them map those CTE workplace readiness skills. All came from our conversations on that. It actually supports our recommendation to encourage using the student learning plan for all middle and high school students and their parents to assist with the selection of course alignment to the student career clusters and pathways that can be in there. We then also looked at the website, and hopefully should be behind up there. And the website, the original kind of plan for it was presented to the members, and the members had some great ideas. Where should things be located? How could the business community find information? How could students find information? Videos. And from that, as I will tell, Beth was able to say, I learned more in that one short period than probably we did over the last year. And so this really was a great thing. So what they've started to do from these suggestions is to include CTE success stories. A lot of our calendar stuff is up in here. So they're actually, so they can see them. Completing display exhibit boards so that we have a standardization or branding of the CTE program so they can see, yes, this is Fairfax County and it is a standard program. Also, they're developing short video clips that help both the student, parents, and maybe even some of the administration or teachers learn about those programs. So it now becomes that extra site. Also, we had some discussion about Camp CTE. Camp CTE was really focused on having counselors and administrators learn about the academies. And we really decided academies is not really all that needed to be known, but all the CTE programs. For example, there's no marketing per se academy, but there's marketing classes. A lot of the stuff that the FATE was discussing were some of those other programs, the EMS program, the fire programs. And if you don't know an academy, this was a way for them to be able to do it. So there's look at how do they effectively reach out to administration, to counselors that they can learn, or even students to learn for that information. And so changing that shift from just academy to learning more about what all CTE programs are out there, and really helping them direct that career and that college planning aspect on it. So that's our actually number one recommendation, is to continue the website updates and branding of CTE materials so that it becomes really recognizable. And also to look at how can we deliver the CTE, Camp CTE, that used to be where your counselors had to leave their school to go to a program. And that's a lot of time and a lot of commitment, and sometimes may have been the reason why we weren't getting as much. So how can there be alternative ways to find and get that information? So if it's using the CTE website or other ways where maybe a student's in with a counselor and they say, I'm really interested in this, and they can pull it up right then and there and be a little bit easier. Third thing that the committee looked over in these meetings was impacting the state graduation requirements. We really looked at how some of these state regulations that are coming forward, how can they impact. We did look at the Association for Career and Technical Education, the ACTE, on state policies impacting CTE report. And was looking at what was being done in there. And even it identified in Virginia, there was a proposed House of Delegate bill which added computer sciences to the list of approved math, science, and CTE requirements for graduation. So we really advocate for this, and one of our recommendations is that we need to have a stronger either school board or administration push behind this. As an advisory committee, there's not a lot of power, but this should be something that pushes, because there are many opportunities, I think, that a student can still achieve those requirements, state requirements, but not that structured, maybe that math. But if they're applying to computer science and learning all the math behind it, it would be a great opportunity as being there. The other thing we also came out of that meeting, and I know Dan Stork was there, and we also had, there, I'll get to it, was how teachers are being credentialed, and the whole thing on licensure and course licensure endorsements. And so there was a lot of discussion For example, maybe an accounting teacher who's CPA might not be able to teach in certain aspects, and how do you blend so that you really have a more effective use of your actual teachers and still achieving the knowledge that the students need to know as being there. And so we continue, they're advocating. I know that CTE has been advocating the state to acquire all CTE to obtain and maintain appropriate licensures and industry credentials, but also to look at those professional licensures to see if they can count for the initial teaching licensure in the provisional components. So we still, as a committee, feel very strongly behind this. I know we've had some that have military experience that as they're coming in, our veterans might have great opportunity to fit a lot of those needs and gaps. We also had Scott Steller come out and talk about the STEAM integration through it, and we really continue to advocate that continue aspect of making sure there's connections all the way along, and to incorporate those work readiness skills also in that part. This should be, I know that they're continue to expand access to sixth graders with the Naviance program assisting in the career and exploration. They're developing integration models for teaching science, engineering, math, and computer sciences at high school levels. And there's also opportunities, summer enrichment programs, where we're starting to see the STEAM programs being offered. So we would continue to recommend that. Dan Stork came out and gave us an update about budget and also ways that our committee could help with involvement and being more active in things. Dr. Kim Dockery was also there giving us the portrait of a graduate and some of the overall instructional kind of goal where things are going to give us some ideas. So we continue to help you, pursue. Out of that was a lot of this cross relationship of what class could go qualify for what graduation. So we really continue to pursue that. I think I said last year I teach in a college setting, why anatomy and physiology can't count for a science. It has to be an elective. It should be somewhere, because I know as the college that I'm part of, if it's on a transcript, it could be potentially viewed as an acceptance program. So continue to push it and look at that state official level as being part. The other thing is that we started to look at business and the community partnership, looking at that program. Members really felt a strong need to continue to identify partnerships, and in fact, I believe we've brought forward that Jay Grant from the actual FPS Business and Community Partnership be part of our committee as a selection member, because he would be able to, as we're talking about things, he may know something that's already in the work, and that could help streamline the effectiveness to that program. We also really did look at our committee in terms of, are we meeting and aligning with the state CTE advisory board? We're very fortunate. Dan Woodley is the state chair for the CTE. And so we really looked at that and started doing some evaluation. And we looked at the advisory board handbook. And out of that, we really were identifying where were we not aligning our membership with. And so that we would really like to see representatives from the 16 career clusters being on there, people who are actively in the workforce who can help predict things, also that cross-reference. And we did some quick tallying at our last meeting and identified where we have coverage and where we're needed. And we're looking at over the summer, selecting members that can be that way, but I know also as a board member, you have the choice to pick on. And so there's some areas that we really have identified that there's dramatic need for. We need somebody from agricultural, food, and natural resources. Everybody's like, well, there's no agriculture. Well, I'm seeing wine coming up that is in agriculture, and it is in Fairfax County as being there. We need some for finances, so a lot of our county and business programs. Health sciences, I'm the only one that's on the committee with a healthcare background, so we could use some more. I only have one perspective, I hate to say, but we could use a lot more besides just nursing and acute care. Hospitality and tourism, human services, law, public safety, corrections, and security. These align with the CTE programs that are actually in place, but really would have a great idea to get some membership to support on that. We looked at our charge for next year, and we've come together with a proposal, as if it's okay with you to continue, is to now start to examine the data relevant to the 16 career clusters, looking at current course enrollments, workforce development needs, industry credentials, student career interest surveys, and make recommendations on it. So looking at the new data that's out for our county, the state CTE has put some things into that. So it's yesvirginia.org has some great alignment. And are we meeting that? Looking at that so that we can make sure that the programs are there. We're trying to look now, not so much in, because I know Beth had shared in one of our meetings that there's actual wait lists for some of the programs. So the information's got out there. We've finally been able, people know about the programs. Now we need to make sure they align so that they can, if they choose after school to go right to the workforce, there's opportunities, there's credentials. If not, go in to get some education, and even if they're not successful within that first year, have skills they can fall back on so they continue to move forward as being part. So thank you, and I appreciate being able to be a part of here, and I know our new leadership will lead us continuing.
Thank you very much. Okay, next is FPAC.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce the 4 members that are here tonight. Dan Amanoff, our vice chair, Charlie Hookey, our secretary, Howard Pearlstein, our representative from Herndon, and Alan Griffith, our representative from Fairfax City, and I appreciate their support tonight. I'd like to just highlight what's in our report, the report and a presentation that has some illustrated highlights in it are on your board docs. The order that I'm going to cover this in is not in the same exact order, but we encourage you to take a look at both of those documents when you have time. I'd like to start with our accomplishments for this year. We thank you for approving the changes to our charter that we had requested to clarify some of the roles and responsibilities. That was a big help for us. We also would like to thank Dr. Garza for supporting our recommendations from our mid-year report, where we suggested we create the facilities comprehensive plan to combine our CIP and the strategic facilities plan and the guidelines that we've been working on into one larger document, and then to submit to the county just what's needed for their CIP. So we think that will really improve the process and the communication, and we're really happy to be working with the schools on that. We also drafted the Facilities 101 presentation, and we thank staff for completing it and polishing it around some of the facts so that when we all use it with the community, it will be accurate and complete. And I know it caused a lot of extra work sessions for you this year, but we were really pleased that you paid a lot of attention to the facilities issues. The CIP and the CIP priorities, the renovation criteria and queue, how big our schools should be, all of those are really important issues that should be considered by the school board. The charge that you gave us for this year had 3 parts. The first one was to propose CIP priorities to deal with the projected enrollment growth, and then work with facilities staff to propose a schedule of boundary changes that are needed and communicate with the community. And thirdly, to work with the facilities staff to formulate the Route 1 corridor options and communicate with those affected communities. Most of our annual report deals with those areas and our activities surrounding that work. I'm going to address just the first one, which was our CIP priorities. We will be integrating those into the comprehensive facilities plan. So as we move forward with that, we'll have some guidelines in there on how to prioritize the CIP activities. And then in the more detailed sections, as they're built out over time, the priorities will become much clearer in terms of when things are going to get done and for whom. The remainder of our work areas I'm going to include in the recommendations that I'll talk about in a few minutes. While we were doing the work in the Route 1 area, we had some observations we would like to share with you. First of all, you may not remember, but it was clear to us that every year since we were started with our 2011 first annual report to you, we were highlighting that something needed to be considered in the way of a plan for that Route 1 area. And in 2011, we recommended that that be done in the 2013 to 14 school year. And as you know, we still don't really have a comprehensive plan for that area. So what's happening is we have to move ahead with our renovations and with our construction that are on the schedule. And so schools will be enhanced and expanded to accommodate some number of children, but we haven't really decided what programs and what children will be in which schools. And we would really like to advocate that that process needs to be reversed and that we have a plan first, and that drives where we put our money. So we know there's been a lot of things that have played into the Route 1 area, but I think we can all learn from that. And there are other areas. We have Tysons, we have Reston, we have Northwestern County for elementary schools. There's a lot of spots where they're not just one school or two schools that need to be addressed. So we need to start taking these more regional looks and come up with a plan before we spend our money. We were also asked to work with APAC this year, and I understand they reported last Monday. We were unable to attend, but we have a take on the work that we did with them that we'd like to share with you. They were asked to work with us to address capacity concerns and make recommendations on how AAP student locations, building capacity, and transportation issues should be addressed. And so we met with them a couple times in joint meetings, and we developed together a decision framework that has several areas of consideration. The two areas that we contributed to were facilities and transportation. The other areas were developed by APAC. Now, clearly, the program side of the APAC program is out of our scope of responsibility. But what we observed was that in the decision tree, one of the major factors that determines whether there's going to be a center at a school or whether a center can be split and 2 level 4 things can be created or what, the main driver is what they call critical mass. And when we inquired about where did those numbers come from, there's apparently no research that anybody could produce. What they were using was a sort of validation that George Mason gave to the program, saying, yes, it's working well. What we would suggest is that it's the school board's purview to really determine what you think is a critical mass, whether you have some more studies done, some more analysis, ask for research, whatever it is. But because that is used to drive the facilities and transportation decisions, it is a really big, important thing. So figuring out what critical mass really is and what it should be and whether there is such a thing is really up to you to decide, and we would recommend that you take a look at that. In the areas of our charge where we have recommendations, the first has to do with the boundary changes. For immediate action, we see that McNair and Coates Elementary Schools really, really need some help right away. And whether it's a boundary change or a program change or what, something needs to be done for those children. In the short term, over the next year or two, we would really encourage FCPS to more strongly support children to walk to school or ride the bus, and try to reduce the reliance on kiss and ride, which really clogs up our facilities. It seems like everywhere we go, kiss and ride is a big issue. And the more we can get the community to accept the transportation we provide and the sidewalks and accessibility we provide, the better off we will all be, including the children. And then the second recommendation for the medium term is that we should really try to come up with some thresholds or triggers that say when a school reaches sort of this overcrowded percentage, something needs to be done, whether it's a program or a boundary change or whatever it is, but not just let these numbers keep growing and floating, and people don't know if you reach 115% of capacity or 150% or when, is it likely that we'll do something about it. And for the longer term, we just have one short one which says that we should really look at the transportation issues of pollution, ride time, costs, et cetera, associated with our islands. We're not advocating just get rid of islands flat out, because some of them have been created for certain purposes and they seem to work and they're not an issue. But others may really be costing us in terms of transportation and wear and tear on people that have to deal with that. In our Route 1 work, we also found that there was no real criteria for determining what schools would be included in a boundary study in the scope. So as we looked in the past at each of the boundary studies, it was sort of, well, let's include this school, or this school, and the recommendation would come to the school board in terms of scope and be approved or modified. And so what we would suggest is that we have a set of criteria to use to help determine which schools would most likely be included within a boundary study. And so attachment 4 to our report is a draft of recommended criteria. We'd like to suggest that we use that in our next boundary study to help us figure out which schools should be included, figure which ones of the criteria work and which don't, and then add that to our process. And as with everything, we understand that there's going to be different situations with different boundary studies, but we need some kind of guideline. In the area of maintenance, we know that the financial situation is just about as bleak as it can be for the county and the school systems next year, and that we're going to have to continue to put our capital dollars towards major maintenance. So we would just encourage you to keep working with the Board of Supervisors to get them to fulfill their obligation that they made to us to provide money through the Infrastructure Finance Committee agreements. And we would encourage that the school board and the schools work with the county for any kind of additional funding opportunities for our facilities, including non-traditional ones. We've brought a few to you in the past. Those haven't been taken advantage of, but others may appear. And so if there are ways to get inexpensive or free money from the federal government or through state programs, we'd really like to see the schools take advantage of that. Our annual charge for 15-16 We're suggesting that we would continue building on the work that we've done to identify emerging capacity issues in the maybe 3 to 6 to 10-year time frame and propose some solutions. Look at where the capacity enhancements need to be added into the CIP cash flow when they are not associated with a renovation. Right now, when we do renovations, we do add capacity where we need to, but if we have a school that we need to add capacity and it's not on the renovation queue, that's not currently shown as integrated into the CIP as part of that plan. So we'd like to see more of that. Identify when former school buildings should be put back into service. We all know the CIP suggests that there are a number of schools we could do that with. The question is when and how to get those in, and again, get those into the cash flow because they're going to require dollars to bring up to speed. And then that we update our strategic facilities plan content for incorporation into the facilities comprehensive plan. It's time to go back and take a look at that, see if anything's changed, and then make that part of our comprehensive plan. We have 3 of our 5 members whose 3-year term expires this year that have not opted to renew their position, primarily due to heavy work and travel schedules. They're Matt Brooks from Springfield, Chris Milivatis from Providence, and Mamie Villaflor, at-large Mr. Moon's candidate. And we'd like to thank them for their service and their contributions. Chad Conway from our Mount Vernon district has also resigned. And we'd like to recognize Chad, who's been with us for all 5 years of FPAC. He was our first secretary, and he drafted the Facilities 101 presentation. So we thank him and wish him well. And recruitments are underway. So those of you that are affected by the member resignations and we have to fill those slots, that'll be coordinated through CPDC and through Pam Goddard. And there's a target for confirmation of that slate by the school board in July. So we hope we get through that process in time to give you a slate in July. In conclusion, we are convinced that FCPS remains in a crisis situation with our school facilities. Specifically, FCPS should direct its capital resources to alleviate the capacity crisis and accommodate the significant increase in enrollment that's still projected for the next few years. Required capacity should be prioritized over renovations in the CIP. We look forward to building on our work in the year ahead, and thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. And finally, we go to Ace.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here. I've got several people that have from the committee who are present. Herb Purcell is just walking in. John Lim, Daniel Tilson, and I'm not sure who else is physically here. Lois is chair, vice chair, and other people intend to be here. Oh, Paige is here. Okay, Paige Shelton's here. And then we've got staff from Community Ed, Adult ESOL, and Adult High School Completion here also. So, oh, thank you. Our school board charge, we were asked to focus on workforce readiness skills, but also increased enrollment for community education. We also were asked to assess high school completion, ability to provide high school credentials, and also promote best practices in marketing. All 3 of the areas that are under our purview have been, in the recent years, going through a reorganization. Community education was reorganized in fiscal year 12 and 13, and is pretty much, I guess, finished reorganizing and actually has a whole year of activity that's the new standard from fiscal year 14. Adult ESOL continues to be part of the Virginia State Regional Grant, And our area is called Region 8. I don't know how many of you had a chance to look at the report, and then there also was an upload of a PowerPoint, which we're not going to be using tonight, but there was a slide with the Region 8 grant map, which is basically all of Northern Virginia. Fairfax County Public Schools continues to be the administrator for the Region 8 grant, and we are in year 3 of that. Adult high school completion has a new leadership. Brad Rickle was appointed last summer, and he replaced Jane Cruz, who left in early 2014 after 19 years as the administrator for the adult high school completion program. Staff on all 3 groups have been great, very supportive, kept us abreast of all 3 areas, and we've been fortunate to work with them. So thank all of them for a lot of hard work. Areas of concern, even though we were asked to work on encouraging enrollment increases, we've been concerned about enrollment declines and flat enrollment. Community education and adult ESOL dropped from 2013 to 2014 by about 5%, partly because of the reorganization, and have been flat for this past year, partly because of the weather. The winter quarter had a particularly low enrollment. People don't like to go out at night when it's snowy and icy, and so there were a number of refunds for classes. The GED test for the adult high school completion group was redone January 1, 2014. On a national basis, some studies say that there's been a 90% decrease in passes. So Fairfax County is right in line with that. There's been a big drop in the high school credential and high school diplomas of all 3 pieces. The adult high school completion program includes the Fairfax Adult High School, the National External Diploma Program, and the GED program. We included in our report and in our slides a chart showing how much of a decline, but between 2010 and 2015, we've gone from about over 900 graduates to projected 129 this year. We used to say that the adult high school completion program was one of the most cost-effective high schools in the county because it had such a huge number of graduates. But that's no longer true. When they do redesign the GED test, the last time was in 2001, the GED pass rate dropped by half. So this is, of course, the first year, but it's an attention-getting change. As far as how the 3 groups are doing what they need to do, you should really be proud of the staff that are working in all 3 areas. Community ed quickly adapted to the weather issues, as did adult ESOL for evening classes, quickly adjusted their budget to deal with potentially declining revenue and to make sure that everything was in balance. Adult ESOL, again, is continuing to be in the 3rd year of being part of the Region 8 grant. And the adult ESOL, of course, is a very important piece of what we do as a school system. 50% of our incoming kindergartners are coming from homes where English is a second language. My own neighborhood, I live in the Stewart Pyramid. My understanding is the entire pyramid, 60% of the families speak another language at home. So our ability to assist in language acquisition is critical. These skills of listening, reading, speaking, and writing in English for these families to help the K-12 population and their own personal experiences to be able to be employed is a key skill that the adult high school completion program is providing, along with the adult ESOL program. As I said, the adult high school has been a particular focus area. The change in graduations and high school credential is attention-getting. Brad Rickel has done a great job, even though it's been a lot of changes. The first thing he came on board to do from being with Edison Academy was to appeal last year's provisional accreditation of the Fairfax County Adult High School with the Virginia Department of Education. We want to commend Brad and his whole team for their successful appeal so that Fairfax Adult High School was retroactively fully accredited. So that's something we should all feel very proud of their hard work. The GED test and our ability to deal with the changes. Resources have been committed. The reality is for the adult high school population, 70% of our students are English language learners. They're typically coming from either adult ESOL and or the transitional high school. Having these students finish on a timely basis, meeting the state time frame for requirements with volunteer tutors, it's a challenging setup. So we have more information in our complete report, but this background will kind of give you an idea of how we are focused on 6 recommendation areas. The first is to evaluate the adult high school completion program. We think a comprehensive review should be undertaken, re-examine the mission, and identify the resources to successfully accomplishment. We are, of course, committed to having an adult high school program that's successful, but I don't think anyone feels good about having 129 graduates. And we obviously have students who want to graduate. The enrollment is consistent with the past, so there are students who want to get a high school credential. We also recommend that we look at the enrollment of decline and flatness for both community ed and adult ESOL. Some of the programs have had a specific decline: business and information technology and health and medical classes. Apprenticeship is at 70% of where it was in 2010. In addition, if ACE is going to be competitive, there are other programs for workforce training. We're competing with NOVA. We're also competing with private workforce training programs. ACE has to be providing excellent classroom instruction and curriculum that are both relevant and current, which means that we have to continue to make an investment in our staff and our equipment that we're providing. Regarding adult ESOL, we recommend that the school board appropriate additional funds for adult ESOL counseling and community outreach, specifically $165,000 using either fiscal year 2015 year-end funding or fiscal year 2016 mid-year funding to help pay for that. The fourth recommendation is to advise the school board to support a viable location for the adult ESOL program that's currently in the Seven Corners, Bailey's Crossroads area of Mason District. I don't know how many of you had a chance to read the paper on Sunday where the Post did a big write-up on the Seven Corners redevelopment. The Wilston Multicultural Center is where we hold a number of adult ESOL classes right now. It's an area of major redevelopment. It's a large adult ESOL population. It's a very central location. It's near the community that needs it, and there's good public transportation. I know this area well. I live within walking distance of Wilston. So we are hoping that the school board is committed to maintaining its presence in that area, whether it's in that exact building or neighborhood. We hope it's very close by. Behind the Wheel program, we'd like you to consider approving additional funding of $126,000 for vehicle maintenance and replacement for the driver ed Behind the Wheel program. We have one of the best programs in the state. It's very safe. In our report, we show the comparison of the numbers in terms of accidents after going through our training. There are 75 vehicles that are needing to be maintained by beginning drivers. It affects not only, of course, the students in the cars, but those of us who ride next to them. So all of us are directly impacted. These fees for the classes are mandated by the state. It's insufficient to maintain the vehicles at a safe level, so we are asking for additional funding, again using 2015 year-end funding or 2016 mid-year funding. And then our last recommendation is on the career training and workforce readiness classes through community ed to improve the marketing program. When the entire streamlining was done of the ACE community education staff, there really was not anything left in terms of marketing. We're appealing especially to 18 and 35-year-olds and also to second language learners. These are not people who spend a lot of time reading the paper, reading the internet. So typically you would be using social media. Again, this was one of our our last charge was to encourage better marketing. So we would ask that we diversify this strategic marketing program using social media and then continue the expansion of outreach to the business community, local government, and community nonprofit organizations, which staff are doing as best they can within the already full plate of commitments. I want to thank you for your support. The group that we are representing are all typically people who can't make it to any school board meetings. They can't go to PTA meetings. They're going to school and working. Many of them don't speak great English or any English. They wouldn't dream of speaking up at a meeting. So we're speaking for them when we're here tonight. We want you all to keep them in mind and to feel very proud of what you're accomplishing. Those of you who have been able to come to graduations for both the adult high school and the adult ESOL programs, we thank you. It means a lot to the students when you're able to come. And I also want to thank all the people on staff and then the people who on our committee, specifically Lois, Herb Purcell, and Daniel Tilson, on helping me with the report. So thank you.
So thank you for reminding us of the mission, the folks who do the education, and the people that we're serving. So at this point, it's sort of open season among board members to ask questions of any and all of you. And it looks like Mrs. Strauss is ready to be followed by Mr. Moon. So Mrs. Strauss.
Great, thank you very much. Excellent reports, and I have many more questions that I would like to ask than I probably will be allowed time for. So here goes. First, with FATE, it's sort of interesting project-based learning, authentic assessment, good teaching and learning comes around so everybody else has realized in math and reading. We should be doing more of your approach. I understand that it is probably time to start thinking of another piece of land or property. So
Absolutely.
Yes, and so I presume that we will be gearing up to do
we are
that.
in process of that evaluation and approval process. So I believe we'll be prepared very soon to present to you and the board options, and
Great.
we hope that you'll consider them seriously.
Yes, well, we certainly we don't want to see any interruption in the wonderful programs that you all bring forward. And I was very pleased also to hear about the middle school.
Yeah, well, we
Good for you.
thank you for your support and look forward to getting it again.
Great. Well, I love FATE, and
if I have a chance, I failed to mention earlier. I did mention our dinner. We do have a date on that. That's Wednesday, October 14th, at the International Country Club. So if you could mark your calendars and please attend. And I think you see firsthand as we award our business partners and our students, and we share the numbers that are within the report here, but more importantly, as the business partners receive some recognition and the teachers receive recognition, it's also important as we see the principals that don't normally see or get the time to really look at the numbers, and I think it's had a big impact on our success.
and there's a little bit of competition among the auto sales
Exactly,
people. I know.
exactly.
It's lots of fun to
So,
watch.
and of course, when the board comes, or there are even just a few members, it has a great impact. So we look forward to seeing all of you there
Great, thank you. Well, I will look forward to the proposal for the next piece of property.
very soon.
Make sure we get that going. Okay. CTE, I appreciate the fact that you shared with us the areas where you're looking for more representation on the committee. Those of us who are looking to appoint new people, I'm hoping that perhaps we can all work together with finding new people. If you find people within those industry areas that you would like to see on the committee.
I believe that we've been able to identify some, and so we'd be more than happy to share those, especially if we know they're within your regions.
Great, that would be great. I was very interested in your recommendations on the flexibility in teacher licensure, and at some point I'd like to know a little bit more about that. As you know, Elizabeth Lodel, who is a resident here, has been appointed to the state board, and she's very interested in some of these areas. And so the teacher licensure and the CTE courses counting for high school graduation, I think, are very important topics for the state board to consider. So I would like to become more knowledgeable about that. And okay, and FPAC for next year, where will you be studying or spending your time? Because I know you spent a lot of time on sort of the southern part of the county. What are your plans for next year?
We're hoping that our charge will have us to look at sort of medium-term, arising, growing problem areas. And so not to jump the gun, but we know that there are several of those, and we don't have those prioritized at all at this point. So what we would do is look at that period of time and look around the county and identify what those areas are and work with staff as we come up with some options for those.
Okay, well, one concern that I would love to have you look a little bit more about the Tysons area, and I've been meeting with community members, and their question is always, how quickly is this going to grow, how many kids, and, we take all the great staff work, and this is what we know so far, and this is the yields, what have you, but clearly understanding when we actually have to not just renovate or add space to the existing schools, what is the timetable for new schools,
right.
For boundaries and all the rest of that. So I know the community, all the civic associations surrounding Tysons, and I know my other colleagues, we are in many meetings with many, many important questions, and so the more of us that are thinking about it, I know that will be important. For ACE, I am very concerned about the GED, and I don't know if there's anything in the whole high school completion issue that you've highlighted.
Well, I'm certainly no expert on this. Staff would be better to defer to, and I think it's probably a national question.
It is.
Some people are talking about alternative GEDs, and I'm sure different states have to go through a process
Mm-hmm.
to decide what they accept. I don't even know if Virginia's considering anything else, but it's sorry, I apologize. So I don't personally have the answer, but these are all reasons why we made our first recommendation that an evaluation be done.
Right, because for somebody to go to the community college, must they have a GED? Does there have to be some evidence of high school completion to go to Nova?
I believe that Nova will accept a GED. I'm not sure if there's any. The one that we've always offered has been completely acceptable.
Right, but the difficulty with the new GED then becomes a showstopper for an awful lot of people.
A very high bar.
Very high bar, right, and that we know statistically the people who don't have a high school diploma, their earning capacity is extremely low. And then the next question is, you had indicated that many of the students who would be going on to the adult high school, they may be coming out of our transitional high school program, and obviously a lot of our ESOL kids, and as we're trying to develop better programming for our older level 1, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22-year-old kids in this spot. I guess I just hope that we are all working together on it, because it is such a huge problem, and where we're going to go with that. And when you talk about in the accreditation for the adult high school program, what was the requirement from the state for the expectation for the time it would take for people to finish high school?
I don't actually know. I'm not sure if, I know Brad Rickles here, I'm not sure if he knows, but I do know that we have advocated, not only this year, but last year, that the time frame that's allowed for ESOL students be evaluated. And again, in other parts of the state, it's not such a huge issue. Northern Virginia has many more ESOL students.
Right, well, this is it. We have many more, and they have to work. I was out at Herndon High School this morning and talking about young people that absolutely must be in the workforce.
Yes.
And then how do we help them learn the language? How do we give them some job skills? How do we get them, in? And then the question is in apprenticeship and in work-specific training. The traditional apprenticeship programs, are they under ACE? Do we have any under CTE, or is it all under
I
ACE?
believe they're all under ACE.
Okay.
So they're through community ed.
Okay, and how are those doing?
Well, they've increased from a low point during the recession, but they're not where they were back in 2010. There are other places in Northern Virginia to do apprenticeships.
And what are those?
Oh, there's a list of them. I mean,
Okay, all right, so there's a variety, so we're
But-
competing.
But our program's competing with other alternatives.
Okay. All right, let me see if there's anything else. I think that was it. So thank you all very much. These were very thoughtful reports and gives us, I think, a lot to work on together. So thank you very much.
Okay, next is Mr. Moon, to be followed by Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Backup. I'm going to start with the FATE, with the one question. On Student Enterprises program we have we done what I was looking into doing anything IT-related program?
Can you
As a part
repeat
of-
the question?
IT-related student,
IT. I'll have to probably defer to Chad on this question. May I? May I phone in? Phone a friend?
First phone a friend, that's a good thing.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
That's a great question, and some of the IT elements that we've looked at in the past have run into struggles when we've looked at licensing issues to refurbish a computer and put something back out with some sort of licensed software. So that's been a challenge for us through our business classes and specifically our A+ classes. So we have looked at that, but we've run into some challenges and difficulties there, as well as taking equipment in and the standards for which we accept donated equipment. So we have looked at it and we've explored it. We just haven't landed on a model that makes sense and would be successful.
okay, thank you. Maybe you and I will chat offline sometime. Next one goes to FPAC. Funding is always a challenge, whether it's operating or capital funding. You mentioned, I think this is at the bottom of page 1, that everyone, school board, board of supervisors, and FCPC staff should continue to work together to change the direction in which we are headed. And you mentioned that additional funding, which is hard to come by. That's my commentary. And you mentioned creative strategies. Do you have any creative strategies that you can share with us? We've been looking for some I've been looking for some creative strategies.
We have too, and if I had them, they would have been the first thing I told you about tonight. We have, however, brought forward some opportunities for no-interest bonds or other energy payback type of opportunities. And there's been some look at that by staff, but no use of those kinds of opportunities. Some of them have to be coordinated with the county. And so the best we can suggest right now is to keep our eyes open. If we see something or we hear about something, then go see if we can get some money from it, because we just need every penny we can get.
I mean, I agree with you, but other than my sleep time, I usually keep my eyes open, and I still don't see these creative strategies.
Yeah, we'll keep trying for you.
Okay, thank you. Let me go to CTE regarding teacher licensure. Mrs. Strauss asked some, made a comment and asked questions about it. Is the basically class teaching related to the teacher licensure issue. One teacher teaching class, or could there be a class where more than one people come in and teach with the different licensures to make up a one class?
I think I'm going to call a friend. Because that's really outside of what our committee can do, but I know Beth Downey can answer that for us.
Some of the issues we run into in looking at, for instance, I'll use our fine arts program and our business webpage development program. The teachers have those skills in both of those arenas. The teachers teaching graphic arts also have the same skills as the teachers teaching web development, but they can't cross over disciplines. So an art teacher can't teach a business and information systems web development class unless they're certified with that particular licensure, and then that runs into some of the industry credentialing issues that we have. So we're looking to try to expand the teacher licensure where applicable across disciplines so that we can better utilize our staff and better utilize our enrollments in our elective programs as that becomes challenging for principals. And then what happens with the principals is they might get 3 sections of an art class and 3 sections of web development, but they can't utilize the same staff who has the same skills to teach that pathway of classes. So we'd like the state to look more in a pathway model than in what has been traditionally a program area model.
So have we made a request as a school system to a state board of education to give us flexibility?
Not to mine, I'd have to defer on that.
I will tell you, I don't know if that specific recommendation's been put forward. I do know our HR department has been in constant communication with the Department of Education because we've run into a multitude of different licensure challenges. You know, we need to follow up with Dr. Pajardo to make sure that one specifically has been suggested. But I know it's one of many that we feel like need to be addressed. So I'll follow up with Dr. Pajardo.
Okay, thank you. My last, maybe couple of questions go to my favorite ACE, because I'm the liaison to ACE. Just the funding questions. Please educate me a little better, because I need to understand this one a little better, that you mentioned about needing to fund, or last year funding, $400,000, and then they went down to 235, but we need to provide at least a minimum effort for funding, and grant money cannot be used to count toward our minimum effort. So what I'm trying to understanding is whether the $400,000 is a minimum amount we need to put into ACE, or it can be less than that. Because sounds like we put in 235 as opposed to $400,000. Are you saying that 235 does not meet the requirement?
Well, the 235,000, this was the big discussion in last year's report. So last year's report, the big concern was the fact that the minimum effort was $400,000, and staff within the county school system decided that $235,000 would meet the requirements. We had been very concerned, and one of the advantages of the request for $165,000 for adult ESOL is that it would bring us back up to $400,000 if there is funding found for it, and it also would be used in an area that we know there is a need in the adult ESOL program to do outreach. So it would accomplish 2 things. It would bring us back up to the $400,000. That would solve a concern that those of us on the committee still have of the minimum level of effort. But in addition, it would be focused on an area where there's a clear need in terms of outreach to the adult ESOL community. Our understanding as far as the 235 is that staff feels like that is acceptable. And so as a committee, we've had to defer to that expertise that we do not have.
Okay,
But it's been a concern.
I understand. I think I heard something similar last year as
Yes.
well. If I have missed, Dr. Garza, if you could.
Okay, we do work regularly with the instructional department to ensure that we are meeting the minimum local effort requirement. And then I think when we did do the additional analysis, we found that $235,000 was sufficient for last year's match. So as we look at it every year, we do want to ensure that we're meeting that requirement. So we will evaluate it each year to ensure that we are meeting that funding requirement.
Could I request the superintendent or our COO to provide us with how you came up with that 235 meeting the requirements? If that remains to be concern of ACE, advisory committee, I would like to have some concrete written explanation for everyone.
We can that information. I just want to also mention that the Adult Community Education Fund did have some additional carryover funding, so it was the recurring piece that was only required at $235,000 level.
Okay, if I could have something in writing. Thank you. The next question that I have is with, behind the wheel, you are seeking additional funding. Is a behind the wheel supposed to be financially, what you call it, self-supporting program?
It may be supposed to be, but it isn't.
So it's supposed to be. When it's a self-supporting, meaning it covers not only just the salary for the teachers, but also maintaining and purchasing new vehicles to maintain program.
Right.
And it's not somehow self-supporting.
It's not. So there was some money last year that was used to help some cars. We have someone here from the driver's ed department who can address this far better than I.
For driver's education and the behind the wheel program, we are self-supporting. We get some money from the state for students who go through the program during the school year. So as far as I know, we are self-supporting.
So if you are truly self-supporting, we would be seeking transfer into the program.
Well, what we currently are trying to do, we have an aging fleet of cars, and I mean. Some students, it's very possible within the next year or so, some students could be in a car that we purchased the year they were born. So we have some concerns about the vehicle purchases, which is really where the funding is needed, because we have one of the best programs in the state. Our crash rating per 100 students is literally 2%, where the state average is 4 to 5. The commercial driving schools, it's 5%. Now, we service around 2,500 to 3,000 students go through the program each year. That's less than 10% of our students. That means 90% of our students are going to private or commercial driving schools that don't have near the safety record we do. So it's the vehicles that we need. 2010 to 2012, there was no vehicles bought. So right now, I probably have 9 to 10 cars that were 1997 Cavaliers. Most of us, I don't think, drive those. We have another 20 cars that are 2001 to 2003s. So our aging fleet is the issue. Right now, I'm at the max of instructor to car ratio, and to offer more classes for our students because of our safety record, we want them to have this training for everyone in this room. We have to buy more cars to offer more classes to service more students in Fairfax County.
Okay, I don't want to belabor on this, but I just want to ask you one follow-up question. Mm-hmm. When we say self-supporting, some people could argue that, in order to become truly self-supporting, we need to be setting aside enough money to be able to replace cars.
Yes.
Is that what you are doing, or are we not doing that?
We do, if I'm not mistaken, have money set aside for purchasing cars next fiscal year. We were able to purchase 4 cars this fiscal year, but we've fallen so far behind from 2011, 2010 that it's the future. Like I said, I've got 8 or 9 cars right now that are on their way out. And those have to be replaced, or we're not going to be able to offer enough classes for the students. So whereas we're self-supporting, yes, we can keep the program going, we keep it funded, but in my professional opinion, we need to offer more classes to the students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to remind the board that as part of the budget reductions, it's Susan Quinn back here, back in 2010 and 2011, we did cut any subsidy for the driver, behind the wheel driver education as part of the budget reductions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thought I'd point out that we probably have a couple of school buildings that were built the year that I was born. Ms. Evans, to be followed by Mrs. Reed.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you for excellent reports. It's fascinating reading, all of them. And I did want to start with FATE. I love to see your report annually and all the real world experience that the students are getting from these entrepreneurial programs. It's just amazing what you're doing. I actually just had one question, and it may even relate to what we were just talking about with the student auto sales. You get the cars, it says, from the public surplus website. Is that
The cars are donated from the public.
So the public donates
Yes.
cars, and then the students
Work on
resell
them.
Work on them.
Body work, engine, mechanical.
Should we have you talking to the, drivers,
that
people?
would be a good potential question. I don't know what rules and
I'm
regulations.
actually thinking
but
that might
I would think
make
those
some sense.
97s could be worked on. Yeah.
Because I was actually going to ask Mrs. McBride if they have
Yeah.
if they have considered
Yeah, well,
using
again, the
our
average sale price
repair
at $1,400.
services.
To your point, I don't think that's what we want to put in that fleet. But from a repair standpoint, I would think there's probably something that these guys could discuss.
to repair the cars.
To
yeah.
help that,
I
yeah.
mean, I think that might be a good synergy there. So
Yeah.
so thank you. It looks like you're making a good profit. I'd love to see you making some money that that can then be put back into the program and put into to some other extras in the
Yeah,
schools.
a lot of, I forget the percentage, but a lot of the cars cannot be repaired and put back on the road. But again, the ones that can and are, eventually do. And we've had board members and a lot of not necessarily school board, but members of our board as well as people in good need of a car. Get a good car and last for a while. And we do registration and titling and so forth through the program. So.
That sounds
It's a
great.
full service, auto sales division.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful to hear. Well, thank you. I wanted to move on then to the CTAC. I think I certainly appreciate the proposal to have more of these courses fulfill high school graduation requirements. And one of the things we've been talking about, or we're going to be talking about more, is different pathways to graduation. So I do think that's something that we should pursue with our legislature and crank that into our conversation about whether that's something that that we should do, because of course I think it is our academies do such a great job, and we are seeing ever-expanding programs, and they're just marvelous. So I'm glad you pinpointed that as an issue, because that's something that we can pursue and hopefully pursue soon.
And
So
that's
thank you.
actually our goal for next year's committee, is to look at career clusters and how do these career pathways, what kind of licensure would you need, or credentialing would you need to be able to start it right after high school? What would be the next level? So those career pathways could be kind of looking at it at career clusters.
And I'm hearing about new things too. You know, we were just talking the other day about 3D printing, you know, as a new phenomenon that we can put into our classrooms and teach our students how to do that. So I'm glad we're pursuing all these new opportunities. With FPAC, you're dealing with some of the most complex issues that we have in the school system, and of course, you have pinpointed one of the main things is just lack of resources. You know, what do we do with our lack of resources? And I do hope we can work together to come up with some more innovative and out-of-the-box ideas, because we're definitely going to need them. I appreciate that you're planning to go to more regions and do community outreach. That was one of the things that you mentioned. I've been trying to figure out how to do more proactive outreach in my own community, so I would love to talk with you about your plan. Or do you have a plan yet for doing more community outreach in the regions beyond Region 3?
We've talked with Dr. Garza about coordinating our outreach, the school's outreach, the school board's outreach into a more coordinated program so that we can cover all of the regions, but we don't have a plan for that yet.
Okay. Well, I would love for us all to be working on that. I've asked my PTAs to send me somebody to talk just about facilities issues.
Great.
And so I'm going to have a meeting on Saturday just because I want to get out there and tell people, not just throw the CIP out there and say, you know, read it, but, you know, really go through it, what it means. So I'm glad you're doing that, and would love to coordinate with you on that.
Sure, if you could let us know when that is, we'll probably have some members interested in coming.
Okay. Yeah. Well, for now, basically, I'm just trying to get people together as a communications mechanism, to talk about it and to really to focus on it. Because, you know, in years past, we've had the CIP, and sometimes only a handful of people come there. Interested in, you know, looking at funding, that you're recommending that we use non-traditional funding sources such as the Qualified Energy Conservation Bonds and 179D federal tax credit. I have to admit, I don't know what those are. And have we ever used them? Have we used them in the past?
We've not taken advantage of those. The staff has looked at them, so maybe they can provide you with what they found with those. They have expirations on them and renewals, and some of them have to be dealt with through the county, so there's some restrictions with those.
Yeah.
I'll just provide a quick update. We have reached out to the county's financial advisors because they do have to be issued through the county, and we have to coordinate the effort with the county. They had done the initial review of those instruments or opportunities, and it came back that it wasn't feasible for the schools at that time.
It was not feasible?
Right.
Okay.
So we have reached out again recently to the financial advisors, and we will be meeting with them again just to kind of get some updates. But I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, and the only thing that I'd like to add to that is some of the things that were brought to us from our FPAC folks was really to take a look at the qualified bonds, the 179Ds. And the deal with that is that initially it had to be something that was early on, and there were a lot of stipulations like Ms. Hogan was mentioning. And it was really would have had to been on the front end rather than being retroactive. So as Ms. Quinn alluded to, we are pursuing it again just to see if it's current, because it's an ever-changing tax code element, and those change annually.
And our magnitude of funding, do we know about how much we might be?
When we looked at it, it was a lot less than what was promoted.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, our point with this report is really to keep our eyes and ears open, and when we see these opportunities, to get in front of them and pursue them.
Yeah. Any
And we don't have
can
any
look.
new ones tonight.
Yes,
for
absolutely. Any place we can look. So thank you, Mrs. McBride. Thank you so much for serving as my appointee and doing an excellent job as chair. This was stunning, the decline in the GEDs from 693 in 10 to 51. And are we thinking that that's primarily the new test? Is that
Well, nationwide, the reporting is that there's a 90% decline.
Right.
So we're right in line.
And is it just that the test is so much harder, or is it?
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
We have staff right behind you who probably can address this specifically.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Currently, the GED examination has changed significantly. We're in the first year of that change. But I am happy to report that across the state, our location in Fairfax County has achieved a 97% pass rate for those who have tested. We're the highest testing center in the state. That being said, there are numerous articles out there in many publications. USA Today, for example, did a report maybe a month or two ago. There are entire states in our country that have not had a single person pass the current GED test. I think Rhode Island was one of them. Now, granted, that's a small state, but probably about the size of Fairfax County. But those are statistics that are national. And we feel like we've turned the corner on that examination. We also have to remember that we offer adult basic education classes for these students to prepare for the GED examination. We also offer GAIN testing, which gives students an opportunity to see what grade level they're at with their reading and writing skills. So the other factor that comes into play, and I don't really have anything statistical for this, but the economy is improving. And when the economy improves, adult education courses and adult high school completion declines because folks are able to earn a better paycheck and they have a job and they're busy with those jobs. So those are a few of the factors that I think come into play when we talk about the decline in that GED examination.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And again, I just want to thank everybody for excellent reports. I have plenty more questions, but I will leave it to one-on-one conversation, so thanks.
Maybe in Rhode Island they're missing questions because they're using the metric system. I overlooked Ms. Hines, so before we go to Mrs. Reed and Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Hines, sorry about that.
That's okay, thank you. Yes, thank you all for these wonderful reports. Very helpful to all of us. So for FATE, I always wonder, you say that you're looking for another opportunity for the kids to build a house, right? So could you tell us a little bit about what that means? Like, where are you looking? And I guess you need to have property donated, right? Because one of the things that is, I wish that we could have houses going up all over the county so that kids in all corners of the county are able to participate in this, but obviously that's pie in the sky. And it started in McLean, I guess, because there was some property donated, and now we're out in
Springfield.
Springfield, okay.
Yeah.
Because
and we have many more homes to go up there, but
okay.
a few more anyway. And I'll defer to Chad on the strategy to get to the next stage.
Okay, thanks.
So where the foundation is very shortly, within the next month, the foundation will be having its own resolution to move forward with a conversation about what's next. The process is a long process, and we're at the very infancy stage. So though it takes a significant amount of time, the foundation believes that this is the right time to start the process, to start the conversations for buy-in and support. So this is very early in the stage with no action items other than the organization supports or doesn't support moving forward with a third site. So very infancy placed is where this is.
Okay, so that would be an effort maybe to expand somewhat?
Correct.
Geographically? Okay.
So we have, at our current location in Springfield, we have 12 more homes to build, right? And we build one house per year, so most builders would be long gone out of our development other than we are. So, but our process is a long, arduous process to go through. So believe it or not, I can say we're 12 years from a build out in McLean. This is the right time to start this conversation and moving. But it's a slow conversation. We're going to slowly walk in. We're not jumping in the pool here. So we have no land identified down that process. It's just very, very early. And Jenny can attest to the time and this process will take, and we'll all go through it together.
Yeah, well, I mean, something so wonderful takes a lot of time to get going. So, but that's great. I just always want to ask that because it's my only complaint about the program is that everybody can't participate. But it's a huge county.
Well, I think to add to what Chad said is, it's complicated in terms of getting everybody, bused. And I mean, it's off-site, as somebody mentioned earlier. And the challenge is, where do you go within the county that allows multiple? I mean, we've had those conversations amongst us, and I mean, so you can't just pick one property.
I know.
Yeah.
It's huge. I know. I'm dreaming, right, that we can do more. And then the middle school program, I'm just curious how the students were chosen. Did they self-select, or was it every student in a grade? How did that go?
So some of you may have heard previously about the STEM integration project at Irving, which has been up and going for a few years. Their desire was to make it a little more formalized with an after-school component program to engage more students that weren't in the technology education program to have an opportunity. So the funding went to support the after-school program and some equipment for them, and then some time from the staff to be there from the board to be there for these lunch and learn. So it was really an expansion of a program that they already had, and from the principal and the teacher's perspective, really provided an additional value addedness to that to reach a few more students.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you, that's great. All right, CTE. Thank you for all your service to Career and Technical Ed. One of the things we talk about, and I'm sorry if I missed this somewhere in your report or in some other information we've gotten, but it seems like every year the big challenge is to kind of market these great things that we do and make sure that more students are taking advantage of them. Do we have a sense that we have greater participation?
There's actual wait list for programs. So yes, it has been a very strong effect, and I think a lot of the effort has moved it that way. And so we just continue to support what has been starting to work. And I do think the student learning plan will help move it forward even more.
So that's good. A wait list is good news, right? But it's also a challenge because we love to serve the kids on the wait list. So do we kind of get to a point where we say, okay, we can expand?
I think another indication of success there, I believe we have over about 14, Beth's behind me, I think, over 1,400 industry certifications. Golly, I was way off. 17,000. Woo, way off. So 17,000.
Students earned industry credentials last year. The numbers are still coming in
for this year.
It's actually 17,053.
It's pretty amazing. 17,053. I mean, I'm committing that to long-term memory. But I think that's a great indication of how students are taking those industry tests, are getting those certifications. I mean, they're employable. But I think the point still is a very good one, and that is, as we continue to put a strain on how many required courses from the state, the fear is we're going to start to be unable to provide that as an opportunity for our students. So the point you made was one that this board has talked about quite often, and that is how do we create conditions where you have more than one pathway to a high school diploma and then success beyond high school. So I think we have one of the best CTE programs I've ever seen, and certainly there's a lot more we can do if we had a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, so I'm glad we're having those conversations with the state, and we really have to pump up the volume on that, I think. And I hate to be sort of a downer, but as we head into fiscal year 2017, we're going to be having difficult conversations really over the next few months about priorities and funding. And I think what we're going to have to do is kind of put everything on the table, right? I mean, I'm not sure what that's going to look like. Nobody wants to think about it. But I worry a little bit that, career and technical education, those sort of things, I want to make sure that there are people at that table protecting and arguing for our CTE, because I think some people think it's an extra that doesn't affect everybody. I mean, and you're pulling together the stakeholder committee, and I'm sure, Dr. Garza, you're aware of, making sure we have people at the table to argue for those. Okay.
And it's more than just CTEs. If we look at, so what happens if students don't have as many options, which would be, I think, devastating in the wrong direction. But let's say we talk about that. It's more than CTE that would be affected. It's fine arts. It's all the full array of, the full array of programming that we offer for students. So, yeah, we'll have a lot of people at the table, including me, that will be very interested in making sure that we take care of protecting those opportunities for kids,
Okay, good.
if we have that opportunity.
All right, good. Well, and just as one board member, I'm right there with you. I think it's very important. So thank you for all that you do. FPAC, as usual, thank you for doing all the work that you do. I just, a couple of things. I'm glad that you mentioned a little bit your conversation with APAC. I have the same questions about critical mass. I think we do need to know what that means, and I'm not sure that we do either. And I wonder if it is or could be affected by changes in curriculum. As we do more portrait of a graduate stuff, we bring more higher order thinking into every classroom, whether our thoughts about critical mass might morph. But it's a good question. I think we should answer it. And Janie Strauss, thank you for bringing up Tyson's. I mean, I've already heard some fears in the Vienna community about, kids being bused all the way out to as far west as Madison High School because of what's likely to change in Tyson. So if we could make sure we're looking over their shoulder, that would help. McNair and Coates, thank you again. That's out, where I am, and I can tell you McNair. I can't say it enough. And thanks to the team, the FPAC team that came out to McNair to talk to the parents. That was sort of a pioneering thing to do, and I appreciate you being there. It was a good conversation, and I think the folks at McNair feel like they had a chance to be heard, and so that's really important. Safe Routes to Schools, Sally Smallwood is our Safe Routes to Schools director, and I want to make sure I don't lose the opportunity to say how important that position is. I think it's grant money that has funded that position, and I want to make sure that we try to keep her. She's one person doing an enormous job, but at least she's someone. And Safe Routes to Schools, that has to be part of our plan for transportation. So I agree. And the idea of capacity triggers, I guess it's attachment 4. I like that. We're right now having a conversation about a very small boundary potential change in the Vienna area, and it quickly gets difficult and political, very quickly. And so having, for board members to have any kind of a structure, anything where we can say, well, when this happens, we just have to do this. Now, but I looked at attachment 4, and it's a long list, and so some of those things will conflict.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, are you guys thinking about sort of prioritizing, or are you kind of leaving that to us?
I think the right approach should be for us to work with staff as we go through the next determination of where the boundary scope should be, and see which ones of those work, which ones don't, and maybe prioritize them. And some of them are, in conflict with each other, but some apply one time and some would apply another time. So right now it's kind of like a laundry list that we need to test.
But I appreciate you guys doing the brainstorming anyway to put it all down for us. That's helpful. And then ACE, there's always this question that I have with ACE. I think that there are competing programs in the community. I hate to say no to funding any wonderful program, right? I mean, these are great programs. And the community benefits a great deal, but of course we have to justify every dollar these days, right? So do we know, can you give me a sense of what we offer that kind of no one else does, or is just really head and shoulders above what other people do?
Well, we have staff here who can do a better job than I to describe that, but in many cases we're offering classes to students who couldn't get them somewhere else, and often much more cost effectively. But Cheryl Granzo can do a better, as director of ACE.
Hi, can you hear me? It's hard to tell. I agree with Kathleen sometimes when the microphone's on. To answer your question, we are the largest provider for the apprenticeship program in Northern Virginia. We are also the coordinating agency for the apprenticeship program. Our program manager, who's here tonight for apprenticeship, he actually does all the site visits to all the other jurisdictions. So we are an integral part. We, part of the Department of Labor. So yes, we offer a lot of those programs. Our adult ESOL program is, one of the largest also in the region, and we are the regional coordinator for those programs. So those are unique, to ACE. As far as our other health and medical programs, we offer a lot of programs that people can come to that maybe don't have a credential that can go to NOVA. So we offer the pathway, the career pathways up to other areas. So, but we do offer a lot of unique things.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I know that the reorganization a few years ago
Right.
did some of that, right?
Right. We when we reorged, we made our concentration on career and work readiness. We also work closely with CTE with their LPN program. That also our CNA program. Students can go and apply, to get into the LPN program. Our program specialist for our health and medical programs is also the director of nursing for the LPN program. So we do work closely, with the CTE programs.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all.
Sorry about that. So Mrs. Reed to be followed by Ms. McLaughlin and then Ms. Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Valco. Thank you all for all of the materials that you've provided us. And it's a shame we don't have more time to talk about it because each one of these reports, I think, are very compelling and provoke a lot of thoughts among the board. First, I'll start with FPAC. Wanted to thank you for working with the APAC. I was in some of those meetings when you two groups were working together, and that was a very innovative and new approach. And so thank you all for contributing. I think both reports are better because of it. For the cross-pollination that occurred. I also appreciate that you have kind of teed up some policy issues for the board to focus on, and my colleagues have mentioned those. The boundary study tool, your focus on capacity versus renovation in the CIP that we really need to talk about. And of course, certain areas or hotspots that we should focus on, such as Tyson's. And last but not least, the issue of critical mass. So those are all things that I believe are squarely within the bailiwick of the board to focus on, and I look forward to those discussions. They won't be easy, but I agree with you that they are very important, kind of cogs in the wheel as we go forward, so thank you all. Regarding the ACE committee, those trends are alarming, as others have said, and you yourself has said, the decrease in enrollment for community education and adult ESOL, the significant decline in the high school diplomas received over 5 years from over 900 down to 129. And so I believe that as a board we'll have to look at the bang for the buck there. I mean, if an outcome is, or a definition of success is high school diplomas attained, then clearly we're headed in the wrong direction with that. And but yet in your report you're asking for more money, and so I guess kind of throwing good money after bad. I wonder if maybe we might think about focusing your efforts, such as on apprentice programs. Clearly there's a demand for that, and I guess I wonder if staff can answer for me, what is the requirement for us to educate folks outside of the K through 12 mission? Is there, or maybe Dr. Garza can answer that. I'm not making any judgment, I'm just asking legally. I noticed that the majority of the adult students were over age 22.
I'd like to maybe ask staff. I mean, it's my understanding that our key mission is K-12. Certainly, I think we have a role to play in some of these areas. I did notice that myself. I think over 80%, if I did the math correctly, I think over 80% of the students are 22 years of age or older. Is that correct?
I actually don't know the exact age of the students. I don't think it's in the report.
It is. It's on. Yes. It's toward the back. You have to kind of do the math, but it's toward. I don't remember what page it was.
Yeah, it's in there, and it's a high percentage. But anyway, so
yeah,
I'm just pointing that out, and maybe that's a discussion for another day for the board. But it just seems to me that with the budget constraints that we have, and the fact that some of these services I know are offered elsewhere in the community, as Ms. Hines has said, it does beg the question of what is uniquely our role to do. And as I was contemplating that, I really kind of thinking about the apprentice or the workforce readiness kind of programs, and my thought, maybe it's kind of a out of the box, but the three committees who are all trying to prepare our kids with specific pathways and skills, to me, maybe there's a way to work more closely together, right?
Were you going to answer the question about what our requirements are? Okay. State requirements?
Okay. Yes, in the Code of Virginia, we are required to offer adult services for adults to attain a high school credential. Also, adult ESOL and literacy is mentioned in the Code of Virginia as well. So those are the two areas that are mentioned. Also, whatever is I can't remember the exact wording, but whatever the community demands as far as educational programs for adults. So those are that is in the Code of Virginia. But we do work closely with our CTE counterparts. I work with Beth. Like I said, with our LPN program, we're working more on career pathways, also in our adult ESOL program. Part of the new reauthorization of the Workforce Investment Act, and the new law requires career pathways for our adult ESOL students as well as for the students, within CT or within the school system. I just came from Richmond yesterday, where the governor signed an executive order concerning the Workforce Investment Act, and we have committees that have the public schools, NOVA, and various business groups working on future legislation, to help people who maybe don't have a high school credential or who have lower skills, how to get them into the workforce and move them up into the middle class. So we are working on those issues.
That's excellent, and that's directly relevant to our strategic plan and Portrait of the Graduate. So I'm very excited about the opportunities that we have, and I know some of the businesses in the community are also looking for us to begin to pump out some graduates to help them fill very specific niches that they have. I also want to mention the issue of barriers, and that is the teacher certification. I know it's already been kind of talked about a little bit, but is there a way to address that through, dual enrollment pilots, use of retirees, some kind of partnership arrangement? I mean, because it seems to me that is something that's kind of holding us back.
I think that's something that maybe Beth can address that.
Actually, part of our teacher licensure certification issue is with the dual enrollment, because since if we have a dual enrollment agreement, for instance, with Northern Virginia Community College, that requires our teachers to not only be endorsed by the state of Virginia to teach a high school license, it also requires them to have a master's degree plus 18 hours in content in order to be able to be certified through NOVA to teach a transferable course from a 2-year to a 4-year university. So if I use an example of a CPA is not required to have a master's degree, and they're not required to have the 18 hours in content, yet they are a certified public accountant. They're not allowed to teach the dual enrollment accounting class for Northern Virginia Community College because of Northern Virginia Community College's accreditation requirements. So to find a teacher who has all of our Virginia State high school licensure plus the dual enrollment licensure becomes very difficult. We do have a number of retirees who do work as they have a second career and they come back and teach for us in a lot of our areas. We do have a lot of teachers who come directly from industry because they want to teach instead of working in industry, and that's another concerning issue, is trying to be competitive with the private enterprise in a public setting. So, for instance, if we look at hiring a nurse, it's very difficult for us to be competitive with what a nurse can make in the medical field and they can make as a nursing instructor in our programs. So we have a lot of those issues that we're working through, and we are working very closely with our our Human Resources Department to try to work through some of these issues with the state and try to be as creative as possible when we're putting forth candidates.
Thank you. Apologize that it's so difficult. You know, these are all such good ideas, and you know, the state sometimes won't get out of our way, it seems. Maybe we need to request a waiver or something. I wanted to mention also that maybe there's some rebranding, and you've talked about that a little bit with the CTE that needs to be done. I mean, because it's really not just the academy programs, it's not just the shop and things like this. You mentioned that really there is a core that is taught in all the schools, right? Like marketing, et cetera, right?
Right, and there has been the branding and the website. There is that they have gone very close in making sure everything's aligned. It's the same information that's provided if you're looking at culinary compared to marketing compared to business. So I think they've made great stride. There's always still the opportunity to improve.
And it's great that the student learning plan could be used, because I think that'll be very helpful because it's individualized. Again, it's getting away from this one-size-fits-all, one pathway to success, you know, and really having these pathways to graduation that'll really help the kids kind of be part of their own goal setting for the future, right?
That and the parents too, because it does require that parent input as they're reviewing it through certain levels, and so it does also help push that way also, because a lot of times I think parents may influence children on where they think they should be career-wise, maybe not what's really the child's interest or what they have the opportunity to try out.
That may have something to do with stress and some of the other issues that our kids have, but that's for another day too, isn't it? Last but not least, kind of tongue-in-cheek, I wondered if you all have ever considered either bus or building maintenance programs that our kids could learn how to do those things right here at our own facilities.
I don't know. I think that's one of the things that next year is that at every meeting we're looking at 4 cluster areas, having presentations on what are the needs for the region and are we aligning with that, and what is realistic. So what would be that certificate? So as you know, we said 17,000 certificates that were awarded. Are there more opportunities that way? And then I really looking at what is the region's need, not so much as what has been state need or even national need, but what is the region needs? And that's the focus for next year, is to really look at those career clusters. What are the opportunities that those students could have at right after a high school with some education, and then 2-year, 4-year, and then maybe even higher.
That's excellent. Thank you all very much.
All right, Ms. McLaughlin.
First, I'd like to thank my appointees, Charles Hookey on FPAC and Daniel Tilson on ACE and Jim McCormick on CTE. I see 2 of them here tonight, and my other appointee has actually had to go to the hospital with his wife, so he couldn't join us. But they have just been wonderful representatives on behalf of Braddock District, and I appreciate their time and dedication to this work. And to all of you who are representing your committees, thank you for ably answering all of our questions and inquiries tonight. I want to thank my colleagues. I've really appreciated listening to your questions tonight. Some of you have asked ones that I was already thinking about. So I'll try to build on maybe some of the things that have been asked so far. First to Mr. Moon's inquiry about behind the wheel. In terms of trying to be self-supporting, one of the thoughts that came to mind, because I think I saw it in your report as well, that we're not necessarily charging competitive fees that the commercial classes are charging. And if that's the case, then what can we as a school system do to address that? Because
It's set by the state of Virginia.
Okay, so once again, our hands are tied that the state of Virginia sets what we can charge for behind the wheel, and yet we know the data shows that our students who take those classes are they're twice as successful with reducing crash rates. So I see you've joined us, so maybe you can add more context.
Yeah, I can speak to that. The state does set it, and we have raised it as much as we can to stay competitive. Private companies, some charge as much as $500-$600, but like I said, we have 90% or more, just because we don't have the capacity to handle the amount of students, and we just can't charge any more. The state won't let us. Now, we do get some money back from the state per student that goes through the program during the year. We don't get anything during the summer. I think it comes out to about $100 per student. So we are self-supporting, but like I said before, we're behind on vehicles to offer more classes to more students.
Thank you, but I think what maybe Mr. Moon and I both are trying to understand is, and it's interesting because it ties into what we experienced with TJ. We charged tuition for TJ all these years to out-of-county students. And then we discovered, wait a minute, other governor schools were also charging for the cost of facilities. So if the Commonwealth of Virginia is saying, here's what you can charge per student, but that's really only covering the cost of the instructors and the admin costs, and it's really not allowing you to be sustaining in terms of the cost of the wear and tear on vehicles and vehicle replacement, then I'm just wondering do you believe that's part of the challenge here in terms of what we're charging? I mean, yes, we're sustaining, but we're not sustaining enough to get our vehicle replacements.
I personally believe that if the state would let us charge a little more, because we are very competitive compared to the private schools. Yes, that would alleviate some of those issues. The demand that we have, because we have such a stellar program, some schools, namely the Lake Braddock, Woodson, Fairfax area, you can't get into a class for 4 months. We put them up, they fill up, and we get phone calls all the time, are we opening more sections, and we just can't do it because the demand's so high. Now, that's not every single school in the county. We're working on that. There's certain areas, obviously, that don't fill quite as quickly. Some are a couple of weeks, but we have a number of schools. The demand is very high, and we could charge more.
It's funny you mentioned Woodson because, yes, my children could not get into the FCPS classes. So watch out for the McLaughlin boys on the road. No, I hear what you're saying. And maybe, Dr. Garza, if we get a sense in talking to Michael Malloy, our lobbyist, to find out, what can we do to help the state understand that the caps they've put on what we can charge are limiting a program that has a tremendous record of success in training drivers and keeping Virginia roads safe. So it would be interesting to see what we could do.
Well, and I also think that, we're hamstringed with some of the state contracts with buying brand new cars. We just bought 4 brand new cars. We're getting them hopefully first of next week. We ordered them 9 months ago. We could get a lot more bang for our buck if we could find a way to get slightly used cars. For what we bought 4 cars for, I could have gone to a local dealership and bought 8 that had 15,000 miles on them.
And we're not allowed to do that right now?
Not to my knowledge, we're not.
Okay. Because Ms. Evans went the line of thinking I was, which is if Fate is getting cars donated, they fix them up, sell them to you guys, which clearly wouldn't be the cost of what you're paying for new cars. You guys could still get your funding, and you guys could definitely probably get cars at a much better rate. So
well, and as far as the maintenance goes too, my colleagues and I were talking I don't see why some of the student programs couldn't do some of the simple things with our cars, such as changing oil, because we have to get that. I mean, we have some teachers that teach tons of classes, so they run the miles up on the car, which is good, but we're constantly having to pay for those maintenance charges through the county, whereas, you know, maybe they could be used as an educational piece along with helping us save money.
Yeah. Good suggestions, and it's great having Dr. Garza and her staff to hear them, so thank you.
Thank you.
So the other thing that I wanted to really focus on was the staggering numbers in the ACE report, specifically on page 13, where we've talked about tonight that in 2010 we had 693 students that were, I guess, as it shows here, obtaining the GED, and now in 2015 we're down to 64.
Correct.
So that I believe is one of the most important things that ACE, through the direction of the board, should be looking at.
We agree. It's our first recommendation that
Yeah.
some sort of an evaluation needs to be done.
Because I want to tie in something on page 28. When you look at the enrollment numbers, I was trying to see where did we have some drops. And interestingly, we had about 400 student drop in Flex, but that's because we added full day Mondays, and we weren't having that kind of instruction going on in our schools because we were now offering it during the school day. We had about 800 student drop in the business and IT.
Right.
And then we had 700 drop approximately in health and medical. And then we had about a 500 drop in driver's ed. But we did not have a drop in ESOL. So what's curious to me is in terms of enrollment in taking classes or taking advantage of ACE educational offerings, where you see those drops don't necessarily relate to students who would be pursuing the GED.
Correct.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
the adult high school is a whole separate program than the community ed.
Right. But when in the report, I could not find something that gave the context of, we know the 693 versus the 64, but I didn't see the enrollment drops from the year prior to this year in terms of those who were actually enrolled in the adult high school, to get an idea of why the GED number would drop so dramatically.
Well, this is a question we can definitely ask staff, but the adult high school completion program is totally separate than the community education program.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay.
That. I'm just saying, when you look at the numbers, the report didn't necessarily give us the same sort of context over from the year prior, and maybe it was a different chart that I wasn't looking at, but in either case, I think we have to be able to drill down and understand what's happened, because that's like a tenfold drop.
Well, if you look at the enrollment numbers of students enrolled, and staff, Brad can definitely address this better than I, but the enrollment numbers are different than the passing the exam. So the students served numbers, this is on page 29. If you look at the adult high school, on page 29, the student served numbers on the far right are 672. We did not include the report from last year in this page, but I think the number from the previous year was something like 608 or 609. So the number of students attending the adult high school is comparable.
Right, and that's what I'm finding so remarkable, is if the numbers of the students who are actually enrolled in the program hasn't changed dramatically, but you have a tenfold drop in those who are passing, then I do recall the conversation being, well, we might have students who have higher needs of support, and that's what's making it difficult, and we see the numbers drop. But then I think that the challenge we face as a school system is, again, where can we direct our resources?
Mm-hmm. Well, you also have a larger number of students that now have to pass an SOL, all those SOLs, to get their high school diploma too. So those numbers have shifted as well in terms of what's required to get the high school diploma. I think you're also seeing a greater need of adult learners in high schools at this time. So we have a large number of students who transition from adult ESOL, level 1 and 2 ESOL, and then they come to adult high school as level 3 and 4 ESOL students, while at the same time taking USVA history, English 9, 10, 11, 12, et cetera, et cetera. So there are significant challenges there, in addition to significant socioeconomic factors as well that present barriers to completion of high school diploma. But our staff is committed to mastery of the skills, mastery of the subject areas, and ensuring that they have earned their high school diploma as well.
Sure. But I think it is particularly telling when you look at, in 2010, where it's almost 700 students, then in 2012, 2 years later, you've got about 600, so it's not much of a drop.
Correct, but those are all of the programs together.
Right. No,
So
I
the
understand.
drop in the GED is a significant point of that.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say is
Right.
even the GED drop really has only been in the last 3 years. We
Correct.
lost 300, and then, a year later, it was almost like another, 300 or lost. So it's very serious. The other thing that I wanted to perhaps ask Ms. Quinn, you could comment on, it was also on, I think, page 26. It was showing the ending balance as 0 versus FY 2014. The ending balance was $366,000. So my concern is, as we've talked about, trying to have it's not showing up yet. So is it just, it's that they haven't reported the ending balance, so it's just showing 0?
That's the approved budget. It's not the actuals yet. We don't have the
Right.
actuals for this year, so
But-
the zero balance. Oh,
Well, it
sorry.
doesn't really help us right now.
Right.
So my question is, what is it expected if it's not?
We will have an ending balance that will be slightly less than the 300,000 that we ended up with last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Ms. McLaughlin, just to point out, this is analogous to the budget that we just passed,
No,
because our ending balance is 0 because we're balancing the budget. This is their budget, not their carryover.
I know, but in terms of being able to understand when you look at it and try to figure out where their fiscal security is, that's what I'm trying to get an idea. Since it's not there in front of us to look at, I was hoping they could verbally report to us what they think is going to be their carryover or their beginning balance then. And that's what
our projected budget is that we will have we will end up in the positive, probably slightly less than the 300,000 that we had last year.
Okay. But in terms of, you guys have done a great job of trying to work at being self-sustaining.
Correct.
And so I just wanted to, as a board member, to kind of get a sense tonight where that stands. And it sounds like it's not too dramatic from the year prior.
Right. Let's try to move on. Again, this would be like asking our budget staff to give us what they think the carryover is going to be at the end of the year.
Yes, Mr. Velkoff,
I
I think you maybe just didn't understand what I was asking. I'm not trying
I
to
think I
delve
understand.
into
Let's
it.
move on.
Well, considering that they had some budgetary requests, I thought it was relevant to understand where they were. And then for the CTE, I know from talking to my appointee, the hope would be, Dr. Garza, that the committee had last year presented 7 recommendations, and the hope was to maybe have sort of an update on last year's recommendations in terms of progress and where they had hoped to see FCPS. And I think that's just a request that's being made. So it's not something for tonight. I'm just saying
So the committee's asking for an update on the recommendations from last year?
I think that might be a different perception. There were multiple reports on where things were. I just think maybe your appointee might have wanted more than what was there. But we did get a report on everything. I mean, we've got numbers reports. We looked at Camp CTE in terms of where it was, why wasn't it effective. So I think it's different, and I'm willing to talk offline if you're
Okay.
interested.
Great.
But as a member, and I think I've got other members in the back here, we did get a strong report on it. On
the
what-
progress of where we are a year later?
Correct.
Okay. The other thing is that I wanted to emphasize the comments made earlier this evening, things like computer language coding being considered like a foreign language. Apparently, Loudoun County and there is beginning to teach computer coding in their in computer language in their elementary schools, and we know that's so that's.
We also are teaching that in a number of different schools. I don't have a list of them, but we've been teaching that for at least as long as I've been here.
So
I don't
maybe
have the list of schools.
Right. So maybe the question is about which elementary schools have access to it, since we know that's where the job market's going in terms of career opportunities. And then also I wanted to suggest that my supervisor, John Cook, has posed questions to our staff about whether or not FCPS is working hard and diligently at workforce readiness. And I'm looking forward to participating in that meeting with him, because I do believe FCPS is committed to that. And I think it's important for him to get that accurate information. But I think that based on what I was hearing from this evening's report, that certainly needs to remain a priority for us as we look at, again, those who may take a different path beyond college, right out of school. And then I also just wanted to offer up to my colleagues that as CTE is looking for ways to improve and strengthen students taking advantage of CTE courses. We know part of the challenge is that if you have to leave your campus to go to an academy, you sometimes have to give up to 2 classes in your schedule, which we know from requirements is very difficult. So perhaps having a survey that the teachers can administer at the last day of the class for CTE, where the students could talk about what are any of the impediments that they found in trying to fit this into their schedule, how they felt this was helping them with their college and or career readiness, things that will be able to help them and help us in understanding kids taking more advantage of it, because I think these are fantastic classes. And the other thing is just whether or not we'd want to look at the engineering and physics class, which is such a great way to introduce that subject to students before they head off to college. Maybe having that as an online option for those who can't leave their school and give up to 2 classes, things like that. So I know you'll get the recommendation from the committee, and then if any other recommendations that I get from my appointee, I'll just gladly pass along to the superintendent and staff as well. And then just finally to FPAC, Karen, I really appreciate you talking about how important it is that when we're looking at any changes, that having a comprehensive plan in place and how that can impact renovations, looking at what programs we're trying to offer or the programs that are there and the impact is really important. So I look forward to supporting the work that you guys continue to do on behalf of the board, and want to thank you for your expertise in what you do. And I'm done, Mr. Velkoff.
All right. Ms. Schultz.
Okay. So I think I'm a little bit shorter. I had a question on the FATE, on the $24,000 worth of corporate scholarships. Is that corporate scholarships for kids to what is?
Those are donations from the local businesses such as mine for kids, for students to go to
Is
higher
that to cover
education.
the kids' fees, or is that to buy equipment, or what does that do?
It's for tuition. To know mostly, correct?
Chad?
Chad?
Okay.
It's
Okay.
tuition primarily.
I didn't mean.
Yeah.
That's what I didn't understand.
It's
I'm like,
tuition.
how do they have to? Okay, all right. Oh, so it's continuing the work of faith.
We have an
beyond.
executive committee that reviews the multiple applications and grant the students by combination of need and extracurriculars. It's almost just like any other
That's terrific.
grant and varies. Again, business partners as well as local businesses.
Is that something that you intentionally try to grow based on industry business, or is it just you're very generous? And
Oh,
I
no,
mean, that's very entrepreneurial of you to turn around and make other entrepreneurs. And
I would love to take credit, but fate's been doing it long before I came
Okay.
aboard, and it does vary year to year.
Okay.
We've had increases and we've had decreases. We've had years where the student participation has not been high, and I think that's somewhat of knowledge of the program as much as need. But
I just think with the national coverage of both the increasing cost of college, I think particularly in Virginia, the cost of college is extraordinary, and some of those increases, that's just a tremendous opportunity for kids to capitalize on what already exists.
And we
So-
see it's very nice to see a student, whether it's student auto sales or carpentry, get the Granger, one of the Granger scholarships that allow him to go, pursue that skill. Which, again, we have a lot of kids going to college. Most of our students in our programs are not slated to go to college,
Right.
and so when they can go to use that money for trade school or Nova for something that's going to
I just see that,
lend them
that
to their
seems to me
career.
that could be a
It's-
difference maker for them.
It's absolutely a great program.
On the Camp CTE, I will say, I think, I'm just going to say as a parent of a current middle schooler and a current high schooler, my takeaway is that it somehow becomes the burden of the individual schools to somehow communicate. And I got a very, very specific, obviously crafted at the local school level postcard, but it was as if somebody had made it on their own. There wasn't a marketing presence behind it. And anything that can be done to better communicate that to parents, so it's not just like, oh yeah, and then we put that aside. That's just a
And you have to remember, Camp CT was designed for counselors to learn about the academy, and the focus is to change that from academies to all programs, and that would be how we continue to recommend the branding and keep that moving forward.
I'm basically agreeing with you from the parent perspective. I forgot. I have something else about Fate. The spirit shop that you describe at Chantilly, do you wind up getting any pushback from the boosters or
the boosters and the students from the marketing classes work well together? I mean, there is some overlap, and from the meetings I've been privy to, it's a working relationship, and they don't step on each other's toes.
Okay. And you guys don't have any problem managing the money from that? I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
So that's actually an outgrowth. So with the entrepreneurship program several years ago, they brought up a school store concept that the entrepreneurship program was working with Principal Teresa Johnson, and that's been going and been successful for the last 3 years, which they took a loan out from Fate for, and they've been paying back and having reports and meeting with our accounting office, and it's really impressive to see a group of young individuals go to an accounting office and have to do an account audit. So that opportunity, they'll be presenting to us next Tuesday for the Spirit Box concept for requesting funds for us this. They've based this off of their previous experience and their previous ability to repay a loan to Fate, which is kind of a neat concept. And this is an approved pilot for for next year for this Spirit Box, which is a 24-hour vending machine, right?
That's awesome.
What it is. So it's a new endeavor that we're going down the road. The school and the students have made the pitch to financial services. They've made a pitch to the principal and to DIT, and they've all gone down this. And it's just neat to see these kids take this idea, go through our levels of approvals, and come out the other side with a win on their side of a program they want to implement. And it's just really incredible to see that.
So I would say, Dr. Garza, anything like this that teaches young kids capitalism and entrepreneurship and how to go out and pay down on the accounting side the loan and work collaboratively with potentially, competitors and be able to manage boosters and all of that. I am like, let's replicate that ad infinitum.
We probably need at some point to engage you, but we would like to develop some capstone projects throughout the K-12 experience, like our fifth grade global awareness technology project. And I'd love for one of those to be around entrepreneurial, and have them develop a business plan, pitch it, and all of that. So something down the road to maybe think about.
And I say that as a parent of now an IB business student who the business plan model that they're working, I mean, for the first time, I'm really seeing kids light up and they see how the real life application of it. So I love that.
So I'll just add, one of the best things I've ever heard was a group of students at the end of the first year with the school store, when they came and did a report from their year sales, talk about the struggles they had with importing products and products being stuck in customs they couldn't get to their customers, right? When you talk about real world and you talk about these are 16 and 17-year-old students that have created this problem for themselves and had to solve this problem about a supply and demand issue with their school, that's a home run grand slam. Doesn't get any better. So
that's fantastic.
That and excess inventory sitting on the shelf and all the things we deal with in retail. So.
There you go. That's I'm telling you what. I want a business class all the way around this. On the additional positions that you're looking for, additional expertise. You mentioned like agriculture / really viticulture. I mean, we now have 2 wineries in Fairfax County, and I gotta imagine that this is an opportunity with the explosive wine industry in Virginia. Why we can't create a pilot program in one of the nearby schools on viticulture and reaching out to the 2 wineries, and then you've got automatic, like hands-on opportunities for the kids to experience the business side of it and grow, future. I mean, I don't know how much viticulture, agriculture work we've got going in our high schools to breed that next generation. But there's a place there to outreach if you're looking for people. So,
I think that's what we're asking for, is to get representative, because they're the ones that would know what are those entry levels, what are the degrees that are required, what are the certifications that are required. And then I think you can start to build your programs the right way.
Dr. Garza, I volunteer to help.
Well, as board members are making your committee appointments, I think that's what you're suggesting, right?
Correct.
Take those suggestions
Wonderful.
to heart.
I'll be looking forward to that. And then I also think even on the enviro agriculture is, reaching down below high school, because I think that's almost too late. The STEM concept down into the middle school and elementary school. I now have surprisingly, an FPAC observation. I find it very interesting, the notion around threshold for triggers about when we do something. But I'm wondering if you could just expand on that around the notion, not when we do something, but the predictive analysis on, cohort progression, because we can't wait until it gets to a trigger point to decide to do something. Don't we have to see the trigger point coming?
Yes. And I know you have...
I know that was a leading question.
Yeah, I know you have a thing about the numbers, and I think staff is working really hard to get better at the predictions, and we're looking forward to having better numbers to work with as well. So I think we're going to get there, but it's taking time.
And the reason I bring this up is because I heard talk tonight around Coates, McNair, Vienna, and Freedom Hill. Those are the 4 schools that I heard talked about by my colleagues. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. But when I look at our facility dashboard on the square foot per child, and this has always been my concern, is the leveraging of making our schools bigger and sardining our kids into schools and the supersizing / Costco warehousing of our kids. Coates is 58th out of 139. McNair is 16th out of 100. Bailey's Upper, I've already told them, is incorrect. So everybody is one up from where they show. McNair is 15th out of 139. Vienna is 75th out of 139. Freedom Hill is 96th out of 139, with somewhere between 91 and 127 square feet per kid. Guess what number 1 and number 2 are? Union Mill Elementary is number 1 with only 80 square feet per child. Number 2 is Greenbrier East Elementary with 80 square feet per child. I don't know why they're 1 and 2. They're both 80 square feet. It has something to do with the 2 of them. I'm sorry, Greenbrier East is number 1, Union Mill is number 2. And so when I look at the schools that are at the bottom, that are around, the 139 that have 170 or 180 square feet per child, and we're talking having almost 2.5 times as less square feet per child when you're up at the number 1 and number 2 and number 3 slot. By the way, Mr. Stork, Stratford Landing's, I think, number 3. That's got to be part of the discussion. It's not just a trigger point of when you reach whatever the capacity is, because if we're calculating the capacity and there's 1,200 kids in one school and there's 1,003 kids in another school, but there's far less square feet per student, you now are literally shoehorning children into school buildings. And that has got to be a part of the conversation because that's the difference between children having, me visiting a school and having a beautiful art room and having art on a cart. That's the difference between having, 2 reasonably timed lunch periods and having 5 lunch periods starting at 9:30 in the morning or something like that. And I'm hoping that it continues to be, especially as we go forward and maybe have a little bit more collaboration on the CIP and the meetings, that this is, the 2 arms of staff and the community plus FPAC together, that this becomes part of the conversation. As when are we going to get to a discussion not just about the caps? And I know we expanded a little bit and created the notion of an expanse of students. So it's not just a cap, but just like an ideal range. But even within the ideal range, we're still shoehorning kids into schools. And that there is an equity problem when some kids have 180 square feet at an elementary level and some have 80. And I'm hoping that we keep this as part of the discussion, because I think it becomes imperative and sets some different priorities.
Okay, let's try to wrap up before it's time to go to the Cappies. Mr. Stork.
I'm going to kind of withhold my questions, but I'm going to make a couple of general comments. First off, I think all of the the committees represented here today. I don't know about the rest of the board, but the quality of the reports that we've been getting over the years has been far surpassed with the reports that you all have presented tonight. They're succinct, they're, I think, pointed in terms of what you're looking, they're actionable, what you're asking us to do. I think they have some excellent points that we need to consider, and so first off, I wanted to say that because I really don't have time to ask some of the questions I would ask, but I think the quality of that is what we can then use. And the core concern I have is the one I've asked for years, which is how are we going to utilize this information? And so I know we've identified a process for doing that. And I just wanted to verify and have, if the Vice Chair, if you could verify for us how we will be responding to the reports that have been presented not only tonight, but previously by the advisory committees. I think I understand the process, but I just want to affirm for the folks on the committee as well as the board how the staff and board will be responding to this.
I'm remembering the scene in Catch Me As You Can, if you can, where he says, "I concur, doctor." I concur. I don't remember any. I don't think there's going to be anything different.
I do,
than before,
if you want me to. But I was.
Please do.
I didn't want to impose my thinking on that. We on the Public Engagement Committee, we talked about this a couple of years ago about how important we thought this was to what we did as a board, and then even as when I was chair many years ago was kind of making sure we recognize the work that's being done. We didn't forget about it. Same time, we know that staff has a role initially, at least in responding, taking a look at the reports, and then kind of giving us kind of feedback and giving the committees feedback on what they've done. Historically, they were provided, if you will, up until I think early September or sometime in September. We would then get kind of some kind of staff report. In September, we would consider it either in September or no later than the October work session, and the board would do then some sort of response as a board at that point in time. So at the beginning of the new school year, in a sense, we would then have some feedback back to the committee, so they would have some sense of what we valued and what we thought should move forward and what we felt either we couldn't move forward because of funding or whatever, but that we would at least take under advisement. And that would obviously tie directly into the charges that we were asking them to do in the following year. So I guess I want to reinforce that because it's so hard to do. I mean, I say that I've been part of this and I haven't always made sure this happens, and I value particularly, I thought these reports were very succinct, pointed, and specific. You know, I can go down the line. I mean, obviously ACE, we have some serious issues to address about where it's going and what we think their role is. For FPAC, I think that obviously there's some clear points that Karen made about this. What are we doing? I mean, we've done some things here, our recommendations, how are we going to go forward. Career technical education, I mean, there's a number of legislative and other issues in there that I think are central to what we want to do. I'm particularly interested in some of the STEAM integration. We have a new program at Mount Vernon High School that we're looking at, and I don't know what, if any, part of that is going to tie with that. And then clearly with the FATE, I mean, the core of they have some new ideas. I know that they're looking to try to move forward, and I value all those. So that's my biggest concern is that we don't lose the quality of what we've gotten. And so with that, I'll just make one other comment. I wanted to particularly thank Chad Conway for his service on FPAC. It has been huge, and his background, he's analyzed and really been involved with so many elements of this. I know he's been frustrated. I share some of his frustration about what we've been trying to do with Richmond Highway Corridor, and really just it's so big what we have in front of us. It's hard to break it apart and figure out how best to move forward. And I know we can definitely find a path for doing that better. I know we're still working on that, but I didn't want this meeting for his work to go unacknowledged, and I'll obviously be telling him the same, but I didn't want to take any more time given the lateness of the hour. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stork. I think everybody has spoken who wants to speak. I'm just going to raise just a couple of things, and with no offense to the other committees, this is just for CTEC. I think what you've talked about with the diploma requirements and licensure requirements, to me this is low-hanging fruit for bipartisan low-hanging fruit in the General Assembly. And I think when we start putting our legislative plan together, I think this may rise to the top this year.
May I tag on to that?
Please.
That's actually a place where some committee ideas could be very instructive. So I know we're short on time tonight, but I was going to add that too. So any ideas that you all have, and I know staff, we would include them as well. So
that'd be great.
I had a conversation with my appointee, Mr. Whitman, recently, and I told him how much I love the calendar, and I did check. Do you all have that calendar? It's wonderful. That's right. I love turning the page and reading another story. This is wonderful, and I'm glad it's now gone to 12 months. The other thing, and I wanted to credit Mr. Whitman, he had what I thought was a brilliant insight, which I think reflects your entire committee, which is the idea that what we're really looking for is an IEP for every student. And I think that's really powerful.
Not everyone might know what an IEP is.
It's an individualized education plan that's for students that have identified special needs. But what we're really talking about is serving the needs of every kid, right? And there's advocacy from the parent, there's advocacy from the student, and there's advocacy and responsibility of the school system. So I think there's something here, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I thought that was a really wonderful insight that your committee is really highlighting something. I think that it's easy to look at the idea of a plan as some bureaucracy, but actually it's a way of, empowering children and their parents to help find their way in the world. So, thank you. With that, I think we're ready to close out. So, again, I want to thank all of you and all the folks on your committees and all the staff that have supported them. Oh, okay.
I want to also comment, this is really great. Thank you for doing this as well. Thank you and congratulations. Thank you all so much.
All right.
Ted, I wanted to say hello.
Hey, Herb. Hey, good to see you.
We worked hard on our report this year.
Yes.
If there is something you want me to look into especially.
No, I haven't in a long time.
Okay.
Probably since the last time I saw you with one. I had some in my refrigerator.
It's challenging
Back
times
out
in
again.